Pokemon Stadiums 1 and 2 will forever hold a special place in my heart, as despite being a nightmarish RNG simulator where the odds of bad things happening to you seem really good, it was also the first game that let me see all those original Gen 1 Pokemon that I had grown to love in 3D, which I recall being pretty mind-blowing for me at the time, and as a plus, the game is pretty fun, even if the AI is a rotten cheater. And the announcer is constantly having what appears to be a mental breakdown over just mundane stuff, or if someone uses Horn Drill or Ice Beam, he gets real excited. But long ago, in some Pokemon TCG book, I read of a Pokemon Stadium game that was released only in Japan, that had fewer options in terms of gameplay, and more importantly, fewer Pokemon. So today on Obscure Gaming, we'll be taking a look at Pocket Monster Stadium, or as it seems to have been unofficially dubbed, Pokemon Stadium Zero. Now, Pokemon Stadium Zero is a title for the N64 that I find rather intriguing, as the game began development like many other N64 titles, with the 64 disk drive in mind. Yes, the 64DD, something that manages to not only be a complete failure of a console add-on, but also somehow the physical representation of sadness all at the same time. It's kind of impressive, actually. But like other 64DD games, whose developers quickly and rightfully assumed that this thing wasn't coming out anytime soon, had two options: redevelop their game with a normal cartridge in mind, try doing that and then screw up at some point and cancel your game, or just cancel your game for the fun of it. This is probably why you don't see any enhancements for the games for when the 64DD actually did come out. Although I think for the Japanese version of F-Zero, there was a stage builder or something like that if you had a 64DD, so there's that one instance I can think of. Congratulations, 64DD, you've been redeemed. What makes Pokemon Stadium Zero stand apart from these other titles, though, lies in the fact that while it was developed with the 64DD in mind, they didn't go straight into redeveloping the game entirely, and they didn't cancel the game. They just put it out as is, a game that is fundamentally lacking, not just as a Pokemon Stadium title, but as a game in general. When you boot the game without a transfer pack and a copy of Pokemon Insert Color Here, you're given two whole options: Battle Mode and Off, and Off just takes you back to the title screen. So it's Battle Mode, that's one option. That's not a lot, frankly, if we're using numbers here. Now, since I assume a lot of the people outside of Japan, if they played this game, probably didn't have an expansion pack and a Japanese copy of Pokemon Green or something on hand, and because it's the main game mode, we'll hop right into Battle Mode. Here, you're given a few options, and I'm being very literal when I say few, because there's really not much here. You have Free Battle, in which you can battle freely against the CPU or a friend. And then we have Tournament. So think any of the cup tournaments you'd find in the later games. You get two divisions, 1 through 30, which is apparently based on a tournament from Nintendo Cup 98. And then the level 50 to 55 division, which was based off of a Nintendo Cup 97 tournament, with your opponents being actual competitors from the tournament. So that's kind of neat. I didn't know actual people from Japan could control RNG, although that's fun to know. But before you can get into all this complicated battling, it's time to pick your team, and Pokemon Stadium Zero gives you a whopping 42 Pokemon to choose from, which is so very disappointing. Apparently, the choices as to which Pokemon made it into the game were based on Pokemon being used in official tournaments, with others added to balance out the roster a bit, and, you know, maybe throw in the series mascot in there just to be safe. Oh, and it is worth noting that of the 42 Pokemon available for use, 2 of them are Mew and Mewtwo, though neither of them are available to use as rental Pokemon, meaning the only way you're going to be able to use them at all is if you have them on a Japanese copy of one of the Pokemon games, and also a transfer pack. So, you get a whopping 40 Pokemon to choose from, which is worse. And of course, this low roster means that some of your favorite Pokemon might not be in the game. I know I was heartbroken to learn that Fat D, the greatest Pokemon ever created, is not in the game. After accepting the fact that you don't have a whole lot of options though, when you hop into the actual game, it's very much the same game as its sequel, or our first one, in that it's two Pokemon just kind of standing still, throwing attacks at one another while some guy gets really excited about it in the background. Only now he's Japanese. And while he's not nearly as coked up as the international announcer, he's alright, I guess. I think he gets better in the sequel, though I can't say for sure. But the effects for moves, the music, sound effects, and most Pokemon animations, give or take an oddity like Snorlax not lifting his head when he's called out in this version of the game, because apparently that's how lazy he is. But he turned his life around for the sequel, and that's all that matters. But anyways, most things are mostly the same, which serves as a nice reminder that Nintendo did a pretty good job of making the transition from sprite-based Pokemon to 3D Pokemon. They still really hold up, except for this guy. Now in our first Pokemon Stadium, Nidoking looked like this. And look at him! He's all sharp and pointy looking, like a dragon or a dinosaur. I have no idea what his motif is supposed to be, but he looks awesome. He looks top tier, and I think he might be top tier, and he knows it. But then we have the original 3D model for Nidoking over here, and look at him. He looks like he was poorly sculpted from clay and then melted a lot. Something clearly went horribly wrong over in this department over here. I mean, maybe it's just me, but his model looks like someone just gave up. Like, this was the model that they were working on the day it was decided that they couldn't use the 64DD anymore, and someone got really rightfully lazy, and then they went out drinking all day, or so I would like to imagine. But yes, point is, besides that dumpster fire thing, everything seems to be pretty much intact, with two core differences though. One, the game's single player is actually really hard. It's like starting off on round 2 mode, which is not great. The AI throws no punches, and not being able to read anything probably didn't help me that much either. But still, they will mess you up real fast, and to make matters worse, the game offers you no continues whatsoever under any circumstances. So prepare to lose a lot. And 2, Hyper Beam is kind of busted. In the Pokemon Stadium most of you have played, Hyper Beam needs to charge after every use. To my recollection anyways. So hit, miss, or feint, you have to wait a turn after using it. But not in Pokemon Stadium 0. If it hits, yes, you do have to wait a turn. If it misses, you can just throw out another Hyper Beam. If it feints the Pokemon, you get to use another Hyper Beam. So in theory, you can really destroy your opponent with Hyper Beam if it does enough damage. It's super demoralizing. I've had it happen to me. Though, should you manage to complete both tournament modes, you'll unlock the ability to play the Game Boy Tower at higher speeds, which is a poor segue into the other game modes of this game, but modes is in quotations because there's really not that much here. Now, if you have both a transfer pack and a Pokemon game, you can play Pokemon in the Game Boy Tower, a concept that they carried over to future titles. I even picked up a copy of Pokemon Green to see if it worked, and it does work. But the transfer pack, on the other hand, has seemingly aged very poorly. I own like 3 and none of them really work at all anymore. I mean, maybe for like 20 minutes and then they'll disconnect. Meaning from now on, I'll just have to emulate it like everyone else. Aside from Game Boy Tower, things get sparse as we have Organize. You can use it to transfer Pokemon and items between their boxes, as well as store things in the game. But wait, the excitement doesn't end there, because we have the Pokédex, where you can both view all of your Pokemon in 3D, while being reminded that you can't actually use most of them in this game. Truly a magical experience for all. And yet, it gets better. There's a list, which lists your Pokemon and their stats. But those ambitious gods of developers that they are wouldn't stop there. And with that, we have the register mode, in which you can register a Pokemon team beforehand so you don't have to worry about all that complicated thinking in the heat of the moment. And to top it all off, there's the party mode, which I imagine would be like a minigame mode, but in actuality it just lets you look at your party of Pokemon, which is very literal and made me cry a little bit. Although, keep in mind, these amazing game modes and features are only available if you have the transfer pack. So it should be clear to see how this game is vastly inferior to its sequel, Pokemon Stadium 2, the game we call Pokemon Stadium, and then the game we call Pokemon Stadium 2 is actually Pokemon Stadium Gold and Silver in Japan, which is why I opted to go with the Pokemon Stadium Zero terminology instead. But yes, only 42 Pokemon, only one real game mode, 2 if you count the Game Boy Tower, the lack of content in certain areas with a lack of polish in other areas, mainly Nidoking. But hell, even the performance of the game itself isn't really the greatest, and this isn't super significant or anything like that, but the game does run noticeably sloppier than Pokemon Stadium 2 or our Pokemon Stadium. And some things can be excused if you make the argument that this was aiming more towards the competitive side of things, and I do think that plays an element here, but I have an additional theory which I don't think is all that far-fetched, and that pun was for Chugga Conroy, wherever he is in the world. But anyways, we know that the game was being developed with the 64DD in mind, meaning things like adding Pokemon, game modes, balance changes. Those can be done later on, and I feel like the game was developed with that in mind. We'll open things up for the competitive crowd and then bring in everybody else with this additional content later on. A kind of scummy business practice and or really old DLC from Nintendo, but still, it solves the issue. But then the bomb is dropped. The 64DD isn't viable anymore. You need to move this whole project over to a cartridge instead. So do you just scrap what you have made up until this point? Or do you remove the functionality and or not finish the functionality with the 64DD, put the game out, and release a sequel as quickly as possible, making what you should have made in the first place, which is a complete video game for Pokemon fans everywhere? And they did in fact put a sequel out relatively quickly. This original Pokemon Stadium was released in August of 1998, with Pokemon Stadium 2 being released in April of 1999, not even a full year later. Granted, they probably already had most of the assets they would have needed. Hell, in the credits of this game, it shows Pokemon you can't play as in the game fighting, so even animations had to be done to some extent. Still, compare that to the roughly year and a half that Pokemon Stadium Gold and Silver or 2 got for development. This naming thing is starting to throw me off a bit, but my point is, I don't feel too far off in my assumption here. But that's Pokemon Stadium Zero, or Pocket Monster Stadium, or Pokemon Stadium. Just pick the one you like the best and roll with it. Well, the game doesn't offer much, and isn't even something I would really recommend when superior versions of the game already exist, unless you're super curious, I guess. I mean, that's why I got it. Personally speaking, though, as someone who found out about this Japanese-only version of this game as a kid, from a series that I've grown to adore, it's oddly fulfilling to not only own it and play it, but also be able to share it with all of you, just so I can rest assured that I didn't make that whole scenario up in my head. No, it really happened. This came out, it's a fact. And it's clearly not a perfect game, I've made that clear, I think, but it did lay the groundwork for future titles, and for that, I'll forever be thankful. But this has been Obscure Gaming, and thank you for watching. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Endslate. Yes, just when you think I'm finally gone for good after that Gaming Mysteries, I come back with an Obscure Gaming. One I've been working on for technically a couple of years, but then it took me a while to get some cables, and then I had that mental breakdown thing. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the new Obscure Gaming. I thought it turned out alright. It was an excuse to talk about Pokemon Stadium, if nothing else. If you liked the video and you want to like it, or subscribe, or, you know, share it, or do those things, or comment, or something like that, you know, you're free to do so. You're not being forced to do so by any means. It's up to you ultimately at the end of the day. You are the master of your destiny. So there you go. But yeah, I do hope you enjoyed the video. And what else do I do on Endslate? I forgot. I'm still, you know, I'm still getting used to this Endslate thing. There's someone who's never watched one of my videos before, really confused right now and getting slowly mad. But welcome back to Endslate, ramble about things, and I thank people, and it's tight. So other things, I have a Twitch. If you want to check out the Twitch and watch me stream when I stream, I have a Patreon. If you want to support me on Patreon to help with the making of videos, that's greatly appreciated. If we hit the next goal, I have to read the remaster of Sonic.exe. Yeah, there's a remaster of Sonic.exe. It's not the same story, it's a new story, and it's longer somehow. And it's dumb, okay? And I have a Twitter, so if you've ever wanted to see someone post about Kamen Rider and some songs they like a bunch, well, then that's a fun place for you to hang out. And then of course there's Facebook, which sometimes I use. I think that's it for links. Nico does the art, although I move the art around and stuff. Which means it's time for everyone's favorite part of the video, and that's the thank yous, because I couldn't have done it without you, and you, and you. Just the three of us here. All of you, thank you. Now, I've gotten messages before about me saying names wrong, and that's not something I do on purpose. I'm actually recording this at 3 a.m. because I had to go to the doctor's today, and I was out and about. But I'm tired, so I might screw up some names, but know that it's only because I love you, and I have to stop talking right now, otherwise it's going to be like 8 minutes. It's going to really piss someone off. So, with that in mind, thank you, Skinny720, and thank you, Deshaun Lewis, aka Shadow Wolf 720. Shadow is helping me fix my car. Thank you, Shadow. And thank you, Rodrigo Darris. Thank you, Queen Sapphire, and Snooper, and Lily Starflame, and Mr. Mohawk, and Blinker002, and John Garcia. I'm sorry. John Garcia. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Joseph Almodovar. That sounds almost right. But thank you. Thank you, Vegeta's Mustache. Thank you, Ragnar the Green. Props for running the Discord, because I'm too scared to. Thank you, Bradley Harder. Thank you, Aria, Mark Ryan, wait, is that Cube Rider? Kubel Rider? Yeah, Kubel Rider. Kevin Reagan, Reaganomics, Michael Holder II, Airman, so difficult to defeat, Nikki Layman, thank you, Nolan, and Christina. That one was easier than I thought. Thank you, Crunchy Face, and thank you, Fernando Silva. I screwed up your name. Thank you, Fernando Silva. I really appreciate it. I said your name right this time. But also, thank you, D-Man's Land, a fine mod, if I do say so myself. I've already mentioned some mods. Ragnar's a mod, so is Shadow, just so everyone knows. And thank you, Louis Pierre Armand. Thank you, Kamimoon. Okay. Thank you, S. That's easy. That's a letter. Thank you, the Club Rocker, the Prince of Ravens, GJR78. That sounds like a Gundam type that didn't get released. The Sick White Tiger. Thank you, Tiger. Another friend and a mod. Thank you, Andy Devora, Lily Bunny, Scott Labar, Ver, Dez, aka Is That So? I know you, Twitch. Thank you, Lucas and Antonio and Antonio and Juano. I'll work on that. I didn't feel great about that, so I'm sorry. But thank you, Sean Carter, and thank you, Justice Thompson, and Rad R, the raddest of ours, Nikki Batelli, Andrew Silverman, Zachary Alexander, Michael P, Elfrey684, Link 5 the Third, okay, Jameson Wiley, Fran Carrick, John Paul Hoare, Mitchell Shore, Abdul Kareem Torres, The Wheels in the Bus Go Die, Greg Wolf, Mr. Bowler, M Gamers, Miu Kuroshima, sorry about that, Escape Route British, Kenpachi Ramasama, or was it Escape Route British? Damn it. We'll say root for this video. Thank you, Anthony Mang and Eric Camacho and Ryan Cole and Jacob Epler and Sexy Enslate Rambles. Oh, they're not going to be sexy when I look at how long this has gone on for. And thank you, Problematic and... Oh, wow. We're not in like 8 minutes. We're only like at 7. So, honestly, as far as Enslates go, I think this one was pretty successful. I'd like to thank you all for coming out to Enslate, and I hope you enjoyed the new video. I got a new video coming out later in the month. I've also got the fall planned out, starting to send patrons I'm stupid, sending them updates about stuff and Halloween, Spooky Finger Puppet Ghost Month happenings, things I got planned. But that's then, and this is now, and this is the end of the video for now until it starts again. So, this has been Yuri of Wind, this has been Enslate, this has been an Obscure Gaming on Pokemon Stadium Zero or Pocket Monster Stadium. I hope you enjoyed the video. God, I hope you enjoyed the video. And, yeah. Thank you for watching. Love you all. Stay safe. And I'll see you next time on Enslate.